Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. Yesterday, we have started our discussion regarding the structure of the judiciary in India. And I told you that in spite of being a federal country, India has adopted the integrated judicial system, under which our judiciary is not a part of the central government or the state government. The judiciary, the whole structure of judiciary is integrated, and the structure of judiciary is pyramidal. Okay, it's in a shape of pyramid, and in this pyramid, the Supreme Court is at the top position, and under the Supreme Court, there are high courts, which are there in all the states of the Indian states of the India, and below these high courts there are districts and subordinate courts which are at the lowest level. So we can see that this is the diagram given. In this we can see that the Supreme Court is at the top position. It is the apex court. Okay, and after that comes the High Court, which is there in all the states of India. And then district courts are there and subordinate courts. Okay. Now you can see that the lower courts, the district courts and the subordinate courts, these courts function under the direct superintendence of High Court. These are under the direct supervision of High Court. Okay, and High Court is also uh, working under the Supreme Court. You can see it here, the arrow sign. So High Court is working, functioning under the Supreme Court, and these district court and subordinate courts are working under the High Court. But this whole system is integrated. These subordinate and district courts are under the Supreme Court also, because we have a integrated system. So in this way, our structure of the judiciary is uh, framed by the constitution makers, and in this connection we can see that Supreme Court of India, whatever decisions or whatever judgments are delivered at the Supreme Court, is binding on all the courts. The judgment of the Supreme Court is binding on all the court, on all the high courts, on all the district courts, and all the subordinate courts. Okay. Now it is the authority of the Supreme Court that it can transfer judges of high courts from one high court to another high court. The judges can be transferred by the Supreme Court. The transfer of judges are of the High Court is not done by the state government. This is the integrated judicial system. If we have adopted the federal judicial system, then in that case, what happened that the high courts are the part of state government, and in this integrated system the high courts are the part of the whole judicial system, and it is working under the Supreme Court. So transfer of judges is done by the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court can move cases from any court to itself, from any court, be it high court or district court or subordinate court. If the case is containing some substantial matter, then the Supreme Court can use its authority to move cases from any court to itself. Then it can transfer cases from one high court to another also. If it is felt that whatever judgment is going to be given in a particular case, that can be affected the whole trial which is going on in a particular high court of a particular state, the whole trial can be influenced because of some circumstances is that like that in that particular state, then the Supreme Court can transfer the case from that particular state to another state, so that the trial can be done in a more free atmosphere, and judgment can be delivered in such a way that justice should not be hurt. There should be justice. So these are the powers of Supreme Court. These are the indicators of the integrated judiciary system. The powers of Supreme Court are such that it proves that we have a integrated judiciary system. In the same way, we see that the High Court has also some powers regarding these district courts and subordinate courts. And in this way, our integrated judicial system works. So it can hear appeals from the lower courts. From any lower court, appeal can be heard in the High Court, can issue writs for restoring fundamental rights. Okay, you have studied under the chapter fundamental rights that the sixth important fundamental right of the people of India is the right to constitutional remedy, and under this right, all the people have right to go to the Supreme Court or the High Court directly if there is a violation of the fundamental rights of the people. So under this article, Article 32, the High Court has been given power to issue writs like habeas corpus, certiorari, mandamus, quo warranto. All these are various types of writs which are issued by High Court in order to protect the fundamental rights of the people. Then we see that the High Court can deal with cases within the jurisdiction of the state. Whatever case arise within the territory of the state, that is heard in the Supreme Court, in the High Court of that state. Exercise and the High Court exercises superintendence and control over courts below it. Whatever courts are there below the High Court, that is lower courts, subordinate courts, district court, all these courts work under the supervision of High Court. So now we will see about district court. District court deals with cases arising in the district. Whatever case is arising in the territory of a particular district is heard in the district court, and it consider appeals also with on whatever decisions are being taken in the lower courts. These decisions can be appealed in the district courts, and then it decide cases involving serious criminal offense. If any case is such that it consists of serious criminal offense, then it decide those cases. Okay, and subordinate courts are the lowest court, and these consider all cases of civil and criminal nature. But serious criminal cases are decided by the district court. Okay, so this is the structure of judiciary in our country, and it's very important for you to, all these are need to be memorized by you. Okay, now we will see jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. What is the jurisdiction? Jurisdiction means its powers. Okay, what are the powers of the Supreme Court? Supreme Court of India is one of the most powerful courts in the world, and it's not that it has unlimited power. It has powers which are limited, and these limitations are put by the constitution, not by any organ of the government. Neither executive nor parliament can impose any kind of limitation on the powers of the Supreme Court. The limitations are imposed on the powers of Supreme Court only by the Constitution. The function and responsibilities of the Supreme Court are defined by the Constitution. The Constitution has described in detail the functions, the powers, and the responsibilities of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has a specific jurisdiction or a scope of power. Now we will see what are jurisdiction means power. Okay, so what are the jurisdictions of Supreme Court of India? The first jurisdiction is called original jurisdiction. Original jurisdictions are those jurisdiction which cannot be heard in any other court. It can be heard only in the Supreme Court of India for the first time. ठीक है, पहली बार जिनको सिर्फ और सिर्फ सुप्रीम कोर्ट में ही सुना जाता है, ठीक है, इनको हम ओरिजिनल jurisdiction कहते हैं। और इसमें those disputes come under original jurisdiction which involve center on the one hand and state, one or two states on the other hand, and it will be discussed in detail. Here only summary is given, and I will explain just after explaining all these in brief. Then there is appellate jurisdiction. Appellate jurisdiction is uh, whatever judgment is being given by the lower courts, like the district courts, the subordinate courts, whatever decisions are given by these courts, there can be appeal against the decisions of these courts in the high court. Then whatever decision is being given by the whole high court, that decision of the high court can be um, can be heard in the Supreme Court. There can be appeal in the Supreme Court. Now we will see this advisory jurisdiction. Advisory is the uh, president is given advice by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court advises the president on any important public matter or any important legal matter. If the president wants advice, then the Supreme Court give advice to the president. Then the one another important function of the Supreme Court is the issue of writ. And we have seen that I have discussed about it when I was discussing the powers of the High Court. And in this, we know that it can issue writs of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibitions, certiorari, quo warranto, and what are the purposes, or what is the purpose of issuing these writs? The purpose is to protect the fundamental rights of the individual. And now uh, there are some special powers of the Supreme Court of India. And what is this special power? This special power is called special leave petition. Okay, SLP, and it is the special power of the Supreme Court of India, and it can be exercised by the Supreme Court of India only in those cases when any substantial question of law, any very important question of law is involved, or there is a very gross injustice has been done. Then, in that case, Supreme Court uh, provides the aggrieved party a special permission. It gives the aggrieved party a special permission to be heard in apex court in appeal against any judgment of any court in the territory of India. Okay, so this right has been given under Article 136 of the Indian Constitution, and according to this right, the Supreme Court of India has a special power to grant special leave to appeal against any judgment in any matter by any court within the territory of India. It is used in cases when any such very important constitutional matter of law is involved, or any kind of gross injustice has been done. Okay, and in this regard, you must know that this is the discretionary power of the Supreme Court, and it is the discretion of the Supreme Court that it can refuse to grant leave to appeal. Okay, it can accept the grant leave to appeal, or it can refuse also. It is the total discretion of the Supreme Court. The aggrieved party cannot claim special leave to appeal. Okay, it's not the right of the aggrieved people, aggrieved party to claim special leave to appeal. It is the privilege which is given to the Supreme Court to grant leave to appeal or not. So it is totally the discretion of the Supreme Court that it will accept the grant leave to appeal or not. So this is called a special power of the Supreme Court of India, and it is given in Article 136. Okay, now we will discuss the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of India. First of all, as I told you earlier also, what do we mean by original jurisdiction? Original jurisdiction means that no other court in the country can decide such disputes. These are the disputes which can be decided only by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has the power to hear such dispute in the first instance and not by the way of appeal. Okay, first of all, these cases will come up only in the Supreme Court. Okay, now we will see uh, what type of cases are there in the original jurisdiction. The Supreme Court has original jurisdiction in the cases when there is dispute between center and one or more states, or center and any states on the one hand, on the one side, and one or more states on the other. So one side there is center plus one or more states, and the other side is one or more states, or there may be dispute between two or more states, and such disputes also come under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And in this regard, it is important to note that the if there is any kind of dispute which is political in nature, then that type of dispute is not heard in the Supreme Court. सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जाने के लिए उस मैटर में कोई ना कोई क्वेश्चन ऑफ लॉ जरूर होना चाहिए, लॉ से रिलेटेड कोई ना कोई लीगल मैटर होना चाहिए, कोई ना कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मैटर होना चाहिए, देन ओनली दैट conflict will come under the jurisdiction of the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Okay, and one more thing that if a private citizen has a अगर एक पर्टिकुलर इंसान ने किसी सेंटर या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के अगेंस्ट में कोई केस किया हो, उनके बीच का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो, जिसमें कि a private person is involved on the one hand and on the other hand there is a central government or state government, then also this type of matter cannot be heard in the Supreme Court under original jurisdiction. So these are the important things about original jurisdiction. Okay, and we know we have a federal structure, and in this federal structure there is a division of power between the center and the state, and this because of this division of power, many times such a situation arise that causes conflict between the center and the state, or between between the states also. So in this regard, our Supreme Court has been given the role of an umpire. Whatever dispute arose regarding the federal matter of the country is this role is being given to the Supreme Court. बिकॉज फेडरलिज्म में ये बहुत ज़्यादा इस बात की पॉसिबिलिटी होती है, और ऐसा होता भी है कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स अराइज होते हैं बिटवीन यूनियन एंड स्टेट, and the power to resolve such cases is entrusted to the Supreme Court of India. Okay, so in this regard, we must know that when such matter arise, when there is a conflict between the center and the state, or between the states, then Supreme Court is there not just to settle the dispute. Its function is not just to settle the dispute, but it interprets the power of the union and state government. It interprets the constitution regarding the division of power between the center and the state. So, it is not just a settlement of the dispute, it is also the interpretation of the constitution, so that if in future any that type of conflict arise, uh, then it can be solved accordingly. So, uh, at present, there are many examples of this original jurisdiction when there was conflict between the center and the state, or between the states. Recently, what happened that Kerala filed a petition in the Supreme Court, and this petition was filed against the central government. And what was the basis of filing the petition? The basis was the question of legality of the Citizenship Amendment Act, which was passed by the parliament. The Kerala government filed a petition, and in this petition, the government questioned the legality of the Citizenship Amendment Act, because, in its opinion, it was violating the fundamental rights of the people. Okay, and why it was claimed by the Kerala government that CAA is against the fundamental rights of the people, and in this way it was against the it was violating the principle of basic structure, which was the judgment of the Supreme Court in the Keswanan Bharti case in 1973, that the Parliament cannot make any such law, or the Parliament cannot amend the Constitution in such a way that the basic structure of the Constitution should not be violated. But according to the Kerala government, in its petition, the Kerala government is of the opinion, it has laid its views that the Citizenship Amendment Act is violative of the doctrine of basic structure, because it is against the principle of equality, freedom, and secularism. And all these three, equality, freedom, and secularism, are part of basic structure of the constitution. And why it is said by the Kerala government like this? Why the government is saying that this amendment act is against the principle of equality, freedom, and secularism? Because uh, the CAA grants Indian citizenship to persecuted non-Muslim minorities, not the Muslim minorities, only to the non-Muslim minorities who are persecuted in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, which are the neighboring countries of India. Uh, mm, these non-Muslim minorities will be given Indian citizenship, but not the Muslim minority. So this is the bone of contention. There is discrimination on the basis of religion. So on this basis, the Kerala government has filed the petition, and in this regard, we see that there are many such petitions have been filed by the Supreme Court, and by the states in the Supreme Court. And in this matter of CAA, the file which was the petition which was filed by Kerala, the Supreme Court has not given the judgment. Now it will be given by the Supreme Court. And other than this, there are many other examples also when the Supreme Court has used its original jurisdiction in such situations. And after this, we will see, this is the important original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And after this, we will see the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And in this regard, all the writs are almost the same which have been discussed in the fundamental rights chapter. So, we will see the Supreme Court can issue writs of habeas corpus, which means to have the body. Okay, and this is a very important right, important writ, because it compels the authorities, the police authorities, to present the offender in physically in front of the court. So it's a very important writ, because there are many times the police misuses its power, and people are forced um, to such situations, and other important writs we will discuss in the next class.